Meghan Markle has admitted failure. That Archetypes, not only was it a bad podcast, but really overall, it was a gigantic failure. And her signing this new deal with a podcast company proves that it was not a successful formula, because even though she's signing a new podcast deal, she is not continuing Archetypes, but they are putting it on all platforms. But I think this company, Lemonada, which signed Meghan Markle, will find out pretty quickly that was probably a fool's errand, because nobody was listening to Archetypes. And despite the happy talk they try to put into the press announcement, it is very clear that Archetypes was an absolute flop. And Meghan Markle, despite whatever she might think, I still don't think she can pull a successful podcast out of her hat. And that's because Meghan Markle is unable to be authentic. She cannot be her authentic self because she constantly has to control everything. Archetypes, if you've ever listened to it, I don't recommend it. Nails on chalkboard. It is so incredibly contrived. You can actually feel that on a script somewhere it said, laugh sadly, laugh happily. You can feel it. They're dramatic pauses. And so I just don't think Meghan Markle can get out of her way. But again, what's most fascinating about this announcement is admitting what really a failure she is in this space already, and how really she's going to have to climb her way back to the top, because Lemonada is definitely one of the lowest ranking podcast networks out there. There are many that are doing far, far better. Of course, including Spotify, Wondery, iHeartRadio, like so many different podcasting companies that are doing exceptionally well. But Meghan Markle could not get any of them. And so she had to go with the lowest tier because that is all she could get. And that screams to me that Meghan Markle, to a certain extent, even though they're trying to happy talk all of this, is essentially having to admit defeat. That Archetypes was a failure. Her brief time as a podcast host was a failure. And will this new program, which we have no details of, we really don't know anything about, which is not really great in your first big press announcement about it, I don't think this one will be any different, because Meghan is always the greatest roadblock to her own success. Meghan Markle has been the arbiter of her own demise, and signing this new deal will not change that. But there is so much to go over here because it's so fascinating to see somebody just completely and utterly fail, yet also try to happy talk so much. So we will get into this today, but if you guys haven't been to Rail News Network, my name is Brittany. I provide you all compelling rail commentary. So if you want to smash that subscribe button, I would love it. I'm hoping to get to 150,000 subscribers by the end of this month, so I would love to have you back. I also have a couple links down below for an upcoming trip to Scotland, some links to my jewelry, so if you guys are interested in any of that, those will all be down below as well. So let's get into this podcast announcement, because I was actually finishing up a video for my fashion channel, Royal Fashion News, about the Spencer tiara. If you are interested, I don't know which one I'll try to finish first, we shall see. But I was totally shocked by this announcement because I was not expecting it, because Meghan Markle's Archetypes podcast was awful. It was genuinely very, very bad. I reviewed some of the episodes for my channel, and I had such a horrendous time trying to get through them. You have the breathy pauses, the fake sincerity, the dramatization of things, and the laughing that is so unbelievably scripted that you really have to listen to it to appreciate it, that you can just feel the script for this episode. Because what Meghan does in Archetypes is it's so overly produced, because the idea was, well, let's discuss the archetypes, the labels that get in women's way to success, which I think is already an antiquated notion. There's a woman who's the vice president of the United States. Women can pretty much do anything. And yes, there are certain labels that get placed on women. There are also certain labels that get placed on men. I didn't think Archetypes was super innovative or creative in any sort of way. It actually felt like a step back. I felt like we were talking about things that pretty much everybody agrees ended like 20 to 30 years ago. So it was a very antiquated show in a lot of ways. And the setup of it is that Meghan would interview a celebrity, but she would also talk, i.e. her producer would actually interview an expert on the subject. So you'd get Meghan sort of narrating through, kind of, and then the expert spliced in, you got a couple of other things, and then you get the interview with the celebrity. And the celebrity interview is the only one Meghan Markle actually did, because Meghan Markle, I don't think actually probably likes podcasting that much, but she just needs something that gives her attention and money, so she does it. And those interviews with the celebrities, some of them were good and some of them were very bad. I thought the interview with Mariah Carey was hilarious because Mariah Carey called her a diva, and Meghan almost had like a conniption. Like, she almost had a complete and utter meltdown that Mariah Carey called her a diva, even though Mariah Carey spent the entire episode talking about that it's good to be a diva. And so it was kind of dumb. And then when it came to her interview with Paris Hilton, I thought the whole interview with Paris Hilton was how Paris got labeled a bimbo and how that sort of stuck and she had to get past that. And Meghan Markle spent the entire episode essentially calling her a bimbo over and over and over and over and over again. It was awful. It was a terrible interview. Meghan Markle, in my humble opinion, is not good at it. And here's the thing, she didn't try to get better at it, because as soon as Spotify let them go, as soon as they said, hey, we're not renewing Archetypes, she didn't do diddly squat with it. She didn't even reformat it or anything. She just let it sit there. And all of a sudden now Lemonada is going to distribute it to other platforms, even though it's been available for free on Spotify for a long time. If you were interested in listening to it, you would have sought it out by this point, I would think. So I just don't think they're going to get that much interest in these piddly bad episodes. Now, if they were doing something creative, like adding new things, or, I mean, they didn't even do a video element, for Pete's sakes. Pretty much every podcast out there has a video element to it too. But the reason Meghan didn't do the video element is that she's not interviewing the experts. She's not in the same room with the celebrities. Like, there was a lot of reasons why Meghan didn't do that, because she can't be authentic. Podcasting requires authenticity. I think this was in a People magazine article or Wall Street Journal or something talking about Meghan, is that she just can't seem to be authentic and she can't seem to be transparent. And people like that in podcasting, especially if it's supposed to be about you. Now, if she's doing an investigation or something and sort of a journalist, she might be able to pull her style off. But I don't think so. I think she's going to try to do Archetypes 2.0, because throughout this announcement, you'll see they put a lot of emphasis on Archetype. Something, let me remind you, was 12 episodes, sank in the rankings every single week, was artificially inflated to #1 because Joe Rogan's podcast was absolutely 100% #1 every single week. In fact, he held a couple of spots. So Meghan's could have never been the top podcast because she wasn't even in the top 5 episodes ever. So this thing was not a great success. But they're trying to spin it at that, and then they're going to do something new. But there's already a problem that I'm seeing with this. So #1, let's talk about the images that are different between the Spotify and this deal with Lemonada, because we have two different pictures here. One, Meghan for Archetypes is looking very soulful, very serious, yet also dressed down. And then in this one we have with Lemonada, she's looking a little bit more friendly. She's having her picture taken by Masan Harriman. This was at the Invictus Games, because of course Meghan Markle needs her personal photographer there all the time to capture her most important moments, because again, let's not forget, Invictus Games was all about her. It was all about Meghan Markle. So Meghan Markle is smiling. I feel like she seems a little bit more approachable, maybe not trying to take herself so seriously. But then when you read the press announcement, you really feel the push that Archetypes was this great success. People need to get in line to be advertisers for it, and it's going to be a great success going forward. A podcast that is a 1.5 years old with only 12 stinking episodes. Who cares? But apparently Meghan Markle does, because it doesn't seem like she has much of a plan otherwise. So let's get into this. It says Lemonada Media, the award-winning podcast network, today announced a new creative partnership with Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. As part of their new deal, Lemonada will distribute the first season of the award-winning, critically acclaimed Archetypes for all audio platforms, and also develop a new original podcast series, as yet untitled, hosted by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Of course, you have to have Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex in there twice. Heaven forbid we forget that stupid title. But it was award-winning, but it was like a People's Choice Award was one of them, and Joe Rogan's podcast wasn't even an option. It's the #1 podcast in the world, and you didn't even have it as an option. So how could Meghan's beat the #1? Again, so many awards in Hollywood are sort of rigged depending on your politics, depending on what you talk about. And so I don't really count that as a win because to me, it didn't really win. You could say jiggered or whatever. Who actually votes for the People's Choice Awards? I have no idea. So that is sort of interesting to consider there as well. And then you also have this saying, well, it's the first season. I guess maybe she might do a second season, but the first season was a flop. It was awful. Like literally it was nails on a chalkboard. I thought it was very, very bad. I had to struggle to get through them because I just needed to get through them so I could do a review on it. And I didn't even get to the second review of the Mariah Carey interview because Her Majesty the Queen had died. And then I think I caught a couple of them here and there. I think I caught the Paris Hilton one because of the bozo stuff and everything. But then I just gave up because honestly, I didn't even care enough to review them because they were so stinking dull. So stinking dull. So it was not that huge of a success. And considering Meghan Markle's platform, it should have been gangbusters, but it really wasn't. And I think the curiosity view, I would imagine most of the views were achieved with the first episode and hardly any with the rest because it continued to plunge down the Spotify track. There's a reason Spotify let them go and a reason why no other platform picked them up except for the small one that was just started in 2019 called Lemonada Media. That's the only reason why. Goes on to say Archetypes, a record-breaking podcast exploring the labels that try to hold women back, will be available across all podcast platforms for the first time. I mean, I know you guys were all waiting to listen to Archetypes on Apple Podcasts. I mean, we were all waiting for it. You couldn't listen to it without it being on Apple Podcasts. With Lemonada overseeing ad sales and distribution, which tells us basically this is a pitch for sales and distributors to contact them to get ad placements within Meghan's podcast so that they can hopefully make money off of it. But again, it's been over a year and a half and nobody seemed to care that it wasn't there anymore. So why would they care that it got picked up again? No. Archetypes has seen over 10 million downloads, averaging nearly 1 million listeners per episode, and debuted as Spotify's #1 podcast in 42 countries around the world, which we all know that wasn't true. Joe Rogan's podcast was the #1. He gets 11 million views per episode. Per episode. Meghan Markle, you could argue, only got less than 1 million because it only got overall 10 million. But you got to think too, as big a name as Meghan Markle has, she could only get 10 million listeners. And so you got to think if they were 12 episodes, a decent amount of people listened to them a couple times. I know I had to pick it up a couple of times when I was doing reviews to catch clips and stuff. So really at the end of the day, that's pretty pathetic. So my channel we're getting close to 50 million overall views for this channel, which is amazing. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? And I know I do a lot more videos than she does. And I edit them all and I do them all myself, by the way. And Meghan Markle needed an entire team to come up with 12 measly podcast episodes that had even no video component. I feel like the incompetency astounds me. Anyways, especially with all the resources Meghan Markle has. Anyways, so I was able to get almost 50 million views. And granted, I probably have close to maybe 500 videos now or something, 400 I think over. I'm not exactly sure how many videos I have. So you could say, well, each one of those videos, like 100,000 each or something like that. But here's the thing, I have no advertising budget. I do everything myself. I don't have any company behind me. And I was able to get almost 50 million views by myself in less than 2 years. It'll be a 2-year anniversary of this channel next month. So how is it that Meghan Markle, with all the resources in the world, all the name recognition in the world, only able to get 10 million listens? I just find that really, really hard to believe, except for the fact that the audience was already small and nobody was listening. And then it goes on to describe Archetypes, because heaven forbid we forget it. It says, listeners tuned in as Mariah Carey spoke about the definition of being a diva. Mindy Kaling celebrated the choice to be single. Pamela Adlon, who I don't know who that is, lifted the lid on the pressure to be a wife and a mother. Issa Rae and Zoe Fundo unpacked the loaded misconception that often comes with being a woman of color. And Jamila Jamil and Shorin Agadouche spoke about the courage that it takes to step up and speak out, even when it puts everything on the line. Did you notice the most key admission from there? It was Serena Williams. She did not mention Serena Williams, which was her first episode, by the way, and would probably be, I would argue, probably the most notable or one of the most notable names in that entire list. And she did not mention Serena Williams. Let me double check though and make sure I didn't miss it somewhere else. Nope, 100% did not mention Serena Williams. Did not mention Serena Williams. I'm going to have to tweet about that because that is fascinating. So Meghan Markle, again, is dismissing people who have seemingly dismissed her. So we can take this perhaps as something where Serena Williams and Meghan Markle aren't really friends anymore. Just putting that out there. Don't know that for sure. But here's a statement from Lemonada. It says, "We are beyond honored that Meghan has trusted us to help democratize access to archetypes," which nobody cares about, and that so many more people around the world will have access to the series soon. Anybody can access Spotify. It's not that hard. Meghan's talent as a host and creator and conversationalist is unparalleled, and we are thrilled to co-create a new series with her that fosters her approach to creating art that matters. Meghan Markle is not a great conversationalist. She made every conversation about herself. She turned it back around to herself constantly, and she was not a talented host. She's not creative. She is not, I would argue, successful in this area. So blowing smoke up her behind, yes, it may help you sell a bit of advertising, but at the end of the day, people will tune out because she was terrible at this. Pretty much everybody admits. I think there was even somebody, a high-level professional podcaster or something, who just said like she wasn't good, and she's not good. So this ain't gonna change that. Goes on to say, as we started to development with the Duchess of Sussex, again, heaven forbid you miss that title, we are blown away by her collaborative spirit and clear vision. But they don't have a title yet. They don't have any subject matter they can speak of. And Meghan Markle is not collaborative. She's controlling. She is not a collaborator. She wants things done her way, her time, her everything. So I know pretty much 100% that again, that's sort of funky advertising there. That's not necessarily true, because Meghan Markle can't not be controlling, because her podcast, apparently, this is according to reports, when she had an issue with her podcast, she didn't go to her producers with Spotify to get it fixed. She went to the head of content. She bothered the head of content to get things fixed with it. There's a reason why Spotify let them go. They were too much of a pain in the patukas and they had no good ideas. So Lemonada is going to find that out very soon. I'm sure Spotify is laughing, laughing and going, good luck with that. Good luck with that. We thought this would be cash gold too, and it wasn't. Along with her deep desire to build compassion and community through this work, Meghan Markle hates her own most intimate community, which is family. She hates his family, she hates her family. This woman cannot build community. She has broken her relationships with all family members, which are basically supposed to be your initial first community in life, is your family. And she doesn't have any conversation with them. So how in the world can she build communities? And the woman has no compassion. She's never shown anybody any compassion, really. So again, totally and completely false advertising there, in my opinion. The Lemonada team felt immediate kinship with Meghan and the Archwell Productions team, and we are delighted to be working together as Lemonada's Chief Creative Officer and co-founder Stephanie Whittles-Watch. So it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together and see if it takes as long as it did with Archetypes, because again, Spotify dropped them for very, very good reasons. They were really, really difficult to work with. They produced mediocre work at the end of the day, and it just wasn't worthwhile keeping them. And Lemonada is a company that's desperate enough to have a big name like Meghan to sign her, even though that everybody else said no. Meghan even makes a statement, "I'm proud to now be able to share that I'm joining the brilliant team at Lemonada to continue my love of podcasting." I don't think Meghan ever really loved podcasting. If she did, she'd create a good podcast, because you create what you love. And so if you love something, you want to create it and you want to make it better. That's part of the reason why I started this channel, my fashion channel. I wanted to create content that I loved because I like creating content. I really, really enjoy it. I hate the editing part, but I like creating content, and I like, I guess, talking to an empty room, looking at my desk. But Meghan, to me, is not really a creative, and I don't think she really enjoyed podcasting. But again, it was an outlet for her because she needs an outlet to promote herself. Because if you'll notice through the website rebrand and everything, it's all about promoting Meghan solely. Only Meghan Markle. Not Harry. Meghan. Being able to support a female-founded company with a roster of thought-provoking and highly entertaining podcasts is a fantastic way to start off 2024 after a disastrous 2023. Our plan to re-release Archetypes so that more people can now have access to it, as well as launching a new dynamic podcast, are well in the works. I'm so eager to be able to share it soon, and I'm overjoyed to be joining the Lemonada family. Okay, again, Meghan Markle has a problem here, which is that Archetypes wasn't successful, and I don't think this new thing will be either. Because again, Meghan Markle just proceeds to always get in her own way, and she is too contrived to have an authentic podcast. And that's what people are striving for, is authenticity. So the best thing Meghan could do is just be a producer, find good ideas, and not really be involved in the podcast at all. Because she wasn't good at podcasting. Maybe she'll get better if she tries more. She might, but she was also an actress for like 20 years and she was still really bad at that. So yeah. And I thought this was interesting too, and I knew it, but it was still good to highlight. Meghan and Archewell Productions are both represented by WME, not Prince Harry. Prince Harry, I don't know who represents him, but the production company and Meghan are represented by WME. So that means Meghan has a lot of control over here that Harry does not have. How is Harry making money? Can he make money in this space? Can he make money in any space? I don't know. I thought this was funny. I found a comment on, I think it was Deadline, and I thought this was hilarious because it just seemed like all the comments there were very scripted. And this one says, "It's good to see her thrive as a strong, independent woman who pulls no punches." I'm like, she's not a strong, independent woman. Everything she has is because of her husband's title. She's not independent. She relies heavily, entirely on her husband and his family to make money. She is smart with ideas and opinions that make sense. The royals seem to be threatened by her strength and intelligence. Blessings to her and Prince Harry. The royal family isn't threatened because of Meghan's strong opinions. They're threatened because she's destabilizing the future of the monarchy by trying to monetize it. That's the problem. That is the problem. They can't let her do that yet. That's all she can do because she doesn't really have anything else. And I thought this was interesting. This was in the variety piece at the very end. And it's a good reminder of how much of a train wreck their first experience with podcasting was. It says, sources had said Harry and Meghan wanted to move away from exclusive Spotify distribution to find a new home for their audio projects. Spotify had expected more content to come out of its pact with Archewell 3 years into their agreement, which was reportedly worth $20 million. Harry and Meghan, just as a reminder, have lost $20 million because of their own incompetence. Yes. And in the wake of the news about Spotify's deal with Archewell coming to an end, Bill Simmons, founder of The Ringer, which Spotify acquired in 2020, said on his self-titled podcast that Spotify should have launched a podcast with Harry and Meghan called The Effing Grifters. I got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try to help him with a podcast idea. It's one of my best stories. And don't you want to know what that story was? But Harry's idea, again, was to interview dictators and other men of power and ask them about their childhood trauma, which no dictator especially wants to do that, because the entire point of being a dictator is to show no fear. It's to show no fear, only power. Harry just, again, he's not the brightest bulb in the box, not the sharpest tool in the shed, whatever you want to call it. Harry is not that bright. And I found a couple of interesting headlines that made me laugh. So one of them said, Meghan Markle finds a smaller distributor for podcasts after $20 million Spotify deal fizzled out. Yes, she has lost $20 million. Just as a reminder, Meghan Markle inks new podcast deal with Lemonada after Archetypes Spotify failure. But I also found it interesting. I was looking through, it was a New York Post article, and they said that Harry and Meghan had only produced 2 docuseries for Netflix, when they've actually produced 3. So I just thought it was funny. They marked Live to Lead, which I thought was funny because I think that one's utterly forgettable. I didn't even watch that one to review it. And obviously Harry and Meghan's show, I totally forgot about Heart of Invictus, which I thought was really, really funny. So Lemonada is based out of Minnesota. It actually even doesn't have a physical office. So this is a very small operation. And apparently last time they did a big round of fundraising, they fundraised $8 million. So Harry and Meghan are aligning now with a company that perhaps doesn't even have the same budget as what Spotify was actually going to give them via their contract for their work. I mean, again, huge, huge step down. Lemonada is named because it's making life suck less, one podcast at a time. And I have to say, I looked through some of their offerings. Nothing that they had really appealed to me. It also seemed to have a very obviously political bent to it. And so it doesn't seem to have a broad window into, different facets of life, you could say. And so looking at all this, it's very, very clear here. Archetypes was a failure. Meghan's first venture in podcasting was a failure, and they're essentially admitting that. They're essentially admitting that she failed here. Now, not in so many words, obviously, because they're happy talking this to infinity, but Archetypes failed. Yes, they're still going to try to promote it, still going to try to get people to watch it or listen to it, because obviously they're wanting to get more money out of it. But the truth is that even as Spotify, let's say, had the exclusive rights and let it go to Harry and Meghan, that also tells you that they weren't even making any money for it. And so they were like, yeah, go ahead. Go wild, go nuts. We don't care anymore. It didn't even make diddly squat to begin with, or it made a little bit, and now it's not making anything. So yeah, you're welcome to it. You're welcome to it. And Meghan, of course, could be wildly successful here. Never ever see it. I mean, I was wrong that actually somebody was willing to sign her, because I thought that would never ever happen. I mean, it wasn't Audible for sure, but still, I was just sort of surprised that somebody did finally decide to sign her. But this is definitely a step back. This is admitting failure. They are being basically shoved back. And this is a result of their own actions, their own incompetency in this space. They need to find something that works for them. I would actually have suggested to them, maybe just launch a podcast and make it really small, just not even have any fanfare. To me, if she loves podcasting so much, why didn't she try to create or do something after the Spotify deal collapsed just by herself and just keep doing it and keep rejiggering it? But no, she didn't want to do anything unless she was thinking that somebody was going to pay her money for it. And when they said no, she's like, well, I'm not going to do anything. So how much do you love it if you can't do anything unless somebody's putting money in your back pocket for it? Again, because this channel started off as just a hobby, then it became a bit of a side hustle, and then it became a career. Those things can happen, but you have to put the hard work in behind it. It'll be interesting to see, because I have an idea for something I'm going to do here on the channel that will also be available for podcasting. I don't want to give too much away yet because I'm still working on it, but it'll be funny to see if I end up being more successful than Meghan Markle is. I'll probably get my product to the market faster than Meghan. And while it won't be perhaps maybe as successful as Meghan's stuff will be, it could be competitive because I got no advertising budget. I just do the things that I'm passionate about, and other people seem to enjoy it too. And so I'm so glad that everybody comes along with me for this journey. The question is, can Meghan get anyone to come along with her? So guys, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate you. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon. Bye.